The distress beacon had been silent for 3 days when the harmonious accord finally arrived. Ambassador Zelther stood on the bridge, his 4 eyes focused on the wreckage floating in the void. The human mining vessel looked like something had taken a bite out of it. 17 hull breaches, according to the sensors. The life support systems were offline. Radiation levels were climbing into the lethal range. "Begin funeral protocols," Zelther said quietly. Around him, the crew bowed their heads in respect for the dead. In his 200 years of service to the Galactic Council, he had seen many disasters. This one was particularly tragic. Humans were a new species, barely noticed by the greater galaxy. They had been so eager to prove themselves worthy of contact. The sensor officer's antenna suddenly stood straight up. "Ambassador, I'm detecting life signs." Zelther's translator chip struggled with the tone in his voice. "That's impossible. Run the scan again." 3 life signs confirmed, sir." "They're moving." Inside the ship, every member of the bridge crew turned to stare at the view screen. The human vessel, the Perseverance, hung dead in space. No lights, no power, no atmosphere in most sections. And yet, somehow, impossibly, someone was alive in there. "Hail them," Zelther ordered. "And prepare medical teams. Maximum biosafety protocols." The communication took several minutes to establish. When the human face appeared on screen, Zelther had to stop himself from recoiling. The woman's skin was covered in radiation burns. One of her eyes was swollen shut. She was wearing what looked like pieces of a solar panel wrapped around her body with cable. "Oh, thank God," the human said, her voice crackling with relief. "We were starting to think nobody heard our beacon." "I'm Chief Engineer Maria Chen. We've had a bit of an accident." "A bit of an accident," Zelther repeated slowly. He gestured at his medical officer, who was already preparing the emergency transport. "Chief Engineer Chen, please stay where you are. We're bringing you aboard immediately. Can you give us maybe 20 minutes? We're right in the middle of rerouting the backup power system. If we stop now, we'll lose all the progress we've made on reactor containment." Zelther felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Chief Engineer, your ship has no atmosphere. Your radiation exposure is well beyond fatal levels for most species. You need immediate medical attention." Maria's face twisted into what might have been a smile. "Oh, we've been managing the radiation with rotating shifts. And the atmosphere thing isn't too bad once you get used to it. We've got these suits we made from the panel shielding. They're not perfect, but they keep us alive. Look, we just need a few more minutes to—" "We are transporting you now," Zelther said firmly. "Medical team, initiate emergency extraction." 3 humans materialized on the medical deck. All of them were injured. All of them were wearing bizarre combinations of ship components as protective gear. All of them were holding tools and seemed annoyed at being interrupted. Maria looked around the pristine medical bay and whistled. "Nice setup you've got here. Hey, do you think we could borrow some of your equipment? Our medical supplies got vented on day 3, and Marcus really should have his leg looked at." One of the other humans, presumably Marcus, waved his hand dismissively. "It's fine. I sealed the wound with a plasma torch. Barely even hurts anymore." The medical staff stood frozen, their various appendages hanging limply in shock. Zelther stepped forward carefully. "Chief Engineer Chen, perhaps you could explain what happened to your vessel?" "Rogue asteroid," Maria said, as the medical team began scanning her with trembling manipulators. "Hit us out of nowhere. Took out main power, life support, communications, and about 60% of the hull. Bad luck, really. We were just about to finish our survey of the mineral deposits in the sector. And how long ago did this happen?" 12 days. Or is it 13 now? Hard to keep track without ship time. Maria pulled off her makeshift helmet, revealing matted hair and more radiation burns. "We got the beacon working on day 2, but the long-range transmitter was toast. We figured we'd just make repairs and wait for someone to show up. Make repairs, Zelther said. The cold feeling in his stomach was spreading. In vacuum, with no power, while exposed to lethal radiation. Well, we couldn't just sit around doing nothing, the third human said. He was younger than the others, with bright eyes that seemed far too alert for someone who should be dead. I'm Tommy, by the way. Junior technician. First deep space assignment. This has been quite the learning experience. Maria nodded enthusiastically. Tommy's been amazing. Kid learned how to rewire a fusion reactor in 0G with no light. We're definitely putting him up for commendation when we get back. Zelther looked at his medical officer, who was staring at the readouts with what could only be described as horror. How are they alive? He asked quietly. The medical officer's translator took a moment to find words. I don't know, Ambassador. By every metric we have, they should have died days ago. The radiation exposure alone should have been fatal within hours. They have multiple organ failures, severe tissue damage, and their cellular structure is breaking down. But they're conscious, alert, and apparently were performing complex repairs in a hostile environment. We're tougher than we look, Maria said cheerfully. She had apparently been listening. Plus, we had the repair manual downloaded to Marcus's tablet. That helped a lot. Without the instructions, we probably would have made some mistakes on the reactor. The reactor? Zelther repeated. You were working on the reactor. Had to, Marcus said. He was lying on a medical bed now, finally allowing the staff to examine his leg. If we didn't get it contained, the whole ship would have gone critical. Would have taken us out and probably damaged your ship when you arrived. Seemed rude. You contained a reactor breach. In the dark. In vacuum. While dying. I mean, when you put it like that, it sounds impressive, Tommy said with a grin. But honestly, it was just following the procedure. The hard part was getting the tools to work without power. We had to rig up a manual system using the emergency airlocks as leverage. That took some creativity. The medical officer pulled Zelther aside. Ambassador, I need to report this to the Council. Human physiology is far more resilient than our initial assessment suggested. They survive conditions that would kill any of the Council species within minutes. And their mental state suggests they don't even recognize how close to death they were. Zelther watched as Maria tried to explain to a confused nurse that she really did need to get back to her ship to finish the repairs. That's what worries me, he said quietly. They don't see this as survival. They see it as routine. Over the next several hours, the human ship was brought aboard the Harmonious Accord for proper assessment. The Council's engineers inspected the repairs the humans had made. Each discovery was more disturbing than the last. The humans had manually rerouted power systems that required specialized equipment. They had sealed hull breaches using nothing but spare plating and a welding torch. They had somehow powered with a hand-cranked generator. They had created a functioning air recycler from spare parts that shouldn't have been compatible. This is impossible, the chief engineer told Zelther. These repairs require a full dock facility, proper tools, a trained crew. They did this in 12 days with no resources. They had resources, Zelther said, looking at the reports. They had determination, and apparently no concept of what's impossible. Maria appeared beside him, finally released from medical after they had stabilized her condition. Hey, I've been looking at your engine readings. You've got a minor fluctuation in your port thruster. Want me to take a look at it? I could probably smooth that out for you in an hour or so. Zelther felt all four of his eyes widen. Chief Engineer Chun, you've been through a severe trauma. You need rest. Rest is boring, Maria said. And I feel fine. The medical team did great work. Whatever that regeneration treatment was, it's way better than anything we've got. We should talk about technology exchange sometime. I appreciate the offer, Zelther said carefully, but our engines are functioning within normal parameters. Sure, normal parameters. But I bet I could boost your efficiency by at least 40% with some minor modifications. Wouldn't take long. Zelther politely declined. Later, in his quarters, he began writing his report to the Galactic Council. He chose his words carefully, aware that what he said next might shape humanity's future with the greater galaxy. Humans possess an alarming tolerance for danger and an inability to recognize moral peril. They view catastrophic situations as problems to be solved rather than reasons to surrender. They are innovative, resilient, and utterly terrifying in their refusal to accept defeat. Recommend caution in future interactions. Recommend extreme caution if they offer assistance. He paused, then added one final line. Also recommend we never, under any circumstances, make them angry. 6 months after the incident with the Perseverance, the Galactic Council received humanity's formal application for membership. Zelther sat in the Grand Council chamber, surrounded by representatives from 15 different species. They had coexisted peacefully for over 3,000 years through careful diplomacy and mutual respect. The chamber itself was a testament to that harmony, built to accommodate species who breathed different atmospheres, saw different light spectrums, and communicated in vastly different ways. The human delegation entered, and Zelther felt that familiar cold sensation again. They walked with confidence, smiling at everyone, completely unaware of the concern their presence caused. Leading them was Dr. James Wu, humanity's chief diplomat for extraterrestrial affairs. He was younger than Zelther expected, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Dr. Wu began, his voice clear and enthusiastic. Thank you for considering humanity's application. We're incredibly excited to join the galactic community and contribute to the continued peace and prosperity of all civilized species. The Nexian representative, a massive crystalline being who communicated through light pulses, asked the first question. What can humanity offer to the Council? Dr. Wu's face brightened. I'm so glad you asked. We've prepared a presentation of humanity's greatest achievements. He gestured, and a holographic display activated. Let's start with nuclear fission. The display showed a mushroom cloud rising over a planet. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. About 80 years ago, we learned how to split the atom, Dr. Wu continued. We harness the same power that fuels stars. It was a major breakthrough in energy production. We now use it to power our cities, our ships, and our industrial facilities. You weaponized stellar fire, the Dexian representative said, their light pulsing in distress. That is the power of creation itself. It should never be touched. Dr. Wu looked confused. Well, yes, initially it was used as a weapon. But that was a long time ago. Now it's just a tool. We've made it very safe. We've only had a handful of major meltdowns in the past few decades. A handful of major meltdowns, Zelther repeated quietly. Around him, he could see other council members sharing concerned glances. Right, but we learned from each one, Dr. Wu said quickly. Our latest reactor designs are much more stable. We're now experimenting with fusion, which is even better. We've managed to sustain a fusion reaction for almost 15 minutes in our latest test. A reptilian council member from Sethia raised their hand. Forgive my ignorance of human timescales, but 15 minutes seems brief for a power source. Oh, it's not a power source yet, Dr. Wu explained. We're still in the experimental phase. We've had some containment issues, but we're working through them. The last breach only destroyed 2 city blocks, and we evacuated most of the people in time. The silence in the chamber was profound. Dr. Wu seemed to sense he should move on. Okay, let me show you something else we're proud of. Genetic engineering. The display changed to show a DNA helix being edited. We've learned how to modify life at its most fundamental level. We can cure diseases, enhance crops, and even create entirely new organisms. You manipulate the sacred code of life? A Valtorian asked, their tentacles writhing in distress. That is forbidden by every ethical framework in the known galaxy. Is it? Dr. Wu looked genuinely surprised. We have some ethical debates about it, sure, but the benefits are incredible. We've eliminated hundreds of diseases. We've created crops that can grow in hostile environments. We're currently working on modifying human genetics to allow us to survive higher radiation levels and vacuum exposure for longer periods. Why would you need to survive those conditions? Zelther asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Well, space is dangerous, Dr. Wu said reasonably. Rather than avoiding the danger, we figured we'd just adapt to it. We're also working on gills for underwater colonization and enhanced muscle density for high-gravity worlds. The possibilities are endless. The presentation continued, each revelation more disturbing than the last. Humans had created artificial intelligence, building thinking machines to serve as tools and companions. They had descended to the deepest parts of their oceans, where the pressure should have crushed any vessel, simply to see what was down there. They had sent probes beyond their solar system before they even had faster-than-light travel, content to wait decades for data. Then Dr. Wu reached the final slide, and his enthusiasm peaked. And this is our most recent breakthrough. We've successfully created a controlled black hole. The chamber erupted. Council members were shouting in a dozen different languages, their translators struggling to keep up. Zelther simply stared at the display, where a swirling point of absolute darkness rotated slowly. Dr. Wu raised his hands, trying to calm everyone. Please, let me explain. It's perfectly safe. Well, mostly safe. We keep it in a magnetic containment field on a station far from Earth. We're using it to generate enormous amounts of energy through matter-antimatter reactions near the event horizon. You created a singularity, the Vexian representative said. Their light pulsing so rapidly it was nearly strobing. You brought into existence a tier in space-time itself for energy production. Right, the calculations were tricky, and we did have one accident where it started growing, but we figured out how to stabilize it. We've gone 3 whole months without a major containment breach. 3 months, Zelther said. He realized his hands were shaking. We're very proud of that record, Dr. Wu said sincerely. The engineering team is working on extending it to 6 months. After that, we'll consider the technology ready for commercial use. A small bird-like council member from Chirax spoke up. Dr. Wu, do you understand that each of the technologies you've described would be considered illegal or unthinkable by every species in this chamber? Dr. Wu blinked. Oh, I didn't realize. But surely you can see the benefits. These innovations have allowed humanity to spread across our solar system. We've established colonies on hostile worlds. We've extended human lifespan by decades. We've eliminated resource scarcity through advanced manufacturing. Progress requires pushing boundaries. Progress requires wisdom, the Chirax representative said gently. Your species seems to lack any sense of restraint. You see a boundary and immediately try to break it. Well, yes, Dr. Wu said, as if this were obvious. How else do you advance? Zelther decided to intervene. Dr. Wu, the Galactic Council has maintained peace and prosperity for millennia through careful advancement. We improve our technology slowly, testing every change thoroughly. We avoid risks that could threaten entire populations. We respect the natural order of the universe. That sounds very safe, Dr. Wu said diplomatically. But doesn't it also sound a bit slow? I mean, no offense, but we analyzed the specifications of council ships on our way here. Your technology is incredibly sophisticated, but it's also incredibly inefficient. Our technology is proven and reliable, a council elder said. Sure, but we could make it better. Dr. Wu pulled out a data pad. We did some calculations during the trip. Your ships are running at about 15% of their theoretical maximum efficiency. Your engines have so many redundant safety systems that you're basically carrying deadweight. Your power distribution is balanced for stability rather than performance. And your navigation systems are using processing algorithms that we retired 40 years ago. He looked up, smiling. We could help you optimize everything. Remove about 87% of those unnecessary safety protocols. Increase engine output by 400% and replace your navigation AI with something much smarter. We actually developed a new AI last Tuesday that would be perfect for your ships. It's much faster than your current systems. The council chamber was silent. Zelther watched as species who had spent centuries perfecting their technology processed what they had just heard. The humans thought their life's work was inefficient. The humans wanted to remove safety systems. The humans had created a new artificial intelligence last Tuesday as casually as one might prepare a meal. Dr. Wu, Zelther said carefully, I have a question for you. What do humans consider an acceptable level of risk? Dr. Wu thought about this seriously. That's a great question. It really depends on what we're trying to accomplish. For routine operations, we generally aim for a 95% success rate. For experimental projects, we're comfortable with much higher risk factors, maybe 50-50 odds. For critical situations, we'll accept nearly any risk level if the potential reward is high enough. And if the risk includes death, then we make sure we have good medical facilities nearby, Dr. Wu said. And we take volunteers. Humans are generally willing to take risks if they understand why it's necessary. We lost a lot of people in our early space program, but they knew what they were signing up for. We honor their sacrifice by continuing to push forward. The Dexian representative's light dimmed to almost nothing. Your species uses death as a learning experience. We use everything as a learning experience, Dr. Wu corrected gently. That's how we improve. Every failure teaches us something. Every accident shows us how to be better next time. Every death means the next person has a better chance of survival. You're field testing prototypes in actual combat? Zelther asked. How else would we test them? Captain Okonkwo looked genuinely confused by the question. Simulations are useful, but nothing beats real-world conditions. Don't worry, we'll have the data you need within a few engagements. The human fleet jumped to the next contested system. This time, when the Carixan deployed their weapon, the human shields held. And then the humans did something Zelther had never seen in 3,000 years of Council military history. They attacked. Not a defensive engagement. Not a measured response. An aggressive, coordinated assault that treated warfare like an engineering problem to be solved. The humans adapted in real time, learning from every exchange, adjusting their tactics with every passing minute. When one approach failed, they tried another. When they found something that worked, they pressed the advantage ruthlessly. The Carixan, accustomed to fighting the cautious Council fleet, had no idea how to respond to an enemy that escalated without hesitation. Within 6 hours, the human fleet had driven them from the system. Within 2 days, they had recaptured all 4 conquered colonies. Within a week, the Carixan were in full retreat, their leadership requesting immediate negotiations. Admiral Vorath stood in his command center, watching the tactical display update with human victories. Zelther stood beside him, equally stunned by what they had witnessed. They won, Admiral Vorath said quietly. In a week, they accomplished what would have taken us months or years. They adapted faster than I thought possible. They treat war the same way they treat everything else, Zelther said. Like a problem to be solved. They don't accept limitations. They don't recognize impossible. They just keep pushing until they find a solution. Are we really going to let them into the council? Admiral Vorath asked. After seeing what they can do? Zelther watched as the human fleet regrouped, already no doubt analyzing their performance and looking for ways to improve. Admiral, I think the question is whether we can afford not to. The council chamber was more crowded than Zelther had ever seen it. Every member species had sent their representatives, along with military advisors, cultural specialists, and security personnel. The humans had saved the council from the Carixan threat, but that act of salvation had only deepened the fear many species felt. They had seen what humans could do. They had watched them turn a losing war into a decisive victory in less than 2 weeks. And now they had to decide whether to welcome these terrifying creatures into their peaceful civilization. Zelther stood at the center of the chamber, aware that his testimony would likely decide the vote. He had been with humans from their first contact. He had seen them at their most vulnerable and at their most powerful. He had studied their culture, their history, their psychology, and what he had learned both amazed and horrified him. Honored members of the council, he began, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. We face a choice that will define our future. Humanity seeks membership, and we must decide whether to accept them. But before we vote, I want to share what I have learned about these people. The chamber fell silent. Zelther activated a holographic display, showing the wreckage of the Perseverance floating in space. 6 months ago, I responded to a distress call. I found 3 humans alive in conditions that should have killed them in minutes. They were repairing their ship in vacuum, exposed to lethal radiation, with no power and no resources except their ingenuity and determination. When we rescued them, they were not grateful for salvation. They were annoyed that we interrupted their work. He changed the image to show Dr. Wu's presentation. Then came their application for membership. They showed us their greatest achievements: nuclear weapons, genetic manipulation, artificial intelligence, controlled black holes. Every single advancement would be considered criminal or insane by our standards. But to humans, these are simply tools. Progress requires breaking boundaries, they told us. They cannot comprehend a civilization that chooses stability over innovation. The image changed again, showing the Indomitable flying into Carixan weapons fire. And finally, we saw them at war. They flew their ships into enemy fire to gather data. They lost crew members and called it an acceptable cost. They developed countermeasures in 18 hours that should have taken months. They created new weapons between battles. They turned warfare into a science experiment. Zelther paused, letting his words sink in. So yes, humans are dangerous. Profoundly so. They are reckless beyond measure. They have weaponized curiosity, industrialized innovation, and militarized optimism. What we call impossible, they call a starting point. What we call catastrophic risk, they call Tuesday. What we call terrifying, they call progress. A murmur ran through the chamber. Zelther could see representatives nodding in agreement, preparing to vote against human membership. But he raised his hand for silence. However, I want you to consider something else. In all my time with humans, across multiple encounters and endless conversations, I have learned something crucial about their nature. They are not malicious. They do not seek to harm or dominate. Every dangerous thing they have done, every boundary they have crossed, every risk they have taken has been in pursuit of improvement. They want to make things better, even if their methods terrify us. He changed the display to show human civilian vessels. Look at these ships. They are nearly identical to their military fleet. The same aggressive design, the same dangerous efficiency, the same overbuilt engines. Because humans do not have different ships for war and peace. They live every day the way we fight our wars. At maximum effort. At maximum risk. Always pushing, always improving, always forward. The Vexian representative pulsed their lights. Ambassador, are you arguing in favor of their membership? After everything you have described? I am arguing that we understand what we are choosing, Zelther said. If we refuse humanity, they will continue to exist. They will continue to innovate, to push boundaries, to treat the universe as a problem to be solved. They will do this with or without our guidance. The question is not whether humans are dangerous. They are. The question is whether we want them as allies or as unknowns operating beyond our influence. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from 15 different species. Consider this. The Carissan had a weapon that defeated our shields. It took them perhaps years to develop. Humans encountered it for the first time and had countermeasures within 18 hours. 18 hours. Now imagine if we had treated humans as enemies instead of allies. Imagine if they had developed weapons specifically designed to defeat our defenses. How long would we have lasted? The silence in the chamber was profound. Admiral Vorath, attending as a military observer, spoke up. The ambassador is correct. In my 200 years of service, I have never seen a species adapt as quickly as humans do. They learn from everything. Every engagement, every conversation, every observation becomes data they use to improve. If they ever decided we were threats, we would not survive long enough to regret it. So we should accept them out of fear? The Chirax representative asked, their feathers ruffling. We should accept them because it is the wise choice, Zelther said. Yes, they are dangerous. Yes, they will push boundaries we would prefer remain intact. Yes, they will offer to improve systems that do not need improvement and will occasionally cause disasters while trying to help. But they will also bring innovation we cannot imagine. They will solve problems we thought were unsolvable. And when the next crisis comes, when the next threat appears that our careful, stable technology cannot handle, they will be there to save us again. He took a deep breath. I propose we accept humanity into the Council, but with conditions. We create new protocols specifically for managing human innovation. Every human improvement must be reviewed by Council safety teams. Every human offer of help must be supervised. Every human optimization must be carefully evaluated before implementation. We create a new council position, a dedicated liaison who will work full-time to manage human enthusiasm and translate their ideas into forms we can safely implement. You want us to create a position solely to limit one species? A council elder asked. I want us to create a position to protect us from both the dangers and the benefits of human nature, Zelther said. Because make no mistake, both are equally powerful. The debate continued for hours. Representatives argued passionately on both sides. Some wanted to reject humanity entirely, to maintain the careful peace they had built over millennia. Others agreed with Zelther that refusing them would be more dangerous than accepting them. Finally, the vote was called that it passed by the narrowest margin in Council history. Humanity would join the Galactic Council, subject to more restrictions than any member species had ever faced. There would be review boards for human technology, safety protocols for human assistance, cultural liaisons to help humans understand why other species might not want their help. Even when it would be beneficial, the humans were informed immediately. Dr. Wu's reaction was broadcast to the entire council. He smiled widely, pumped his fist in the air, and said, "Excellent. We're so excited to be part of the galactic community. We've already started working on some ideas for improving council efficiency. We should schedule a meeting to discuss implementation. Zelther felt a headache forming. He had 4 eyes, and somehow all of them hurt simultaneously. The celebration that evening was held in the grand hall of the council station. Representatives mingled carefully, aware that they had made a historic decision, but uncertain what it would mean for their future. Zelther stood near the viewing window, looking out at the stars, when Dr. Wu approached. "Ambassador," the human said, holding a drink in some kind of glass container. "I wanted to thank you personally. Your testimony was crucial to our acceptance." "I spoke the truth," Zelther said simply. "You are terrifying, but you are also necessary." Dr. Wu laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment. Hey, I wanted to run something by you. Our engineering team has been analyzing the council station's power distribution system. We think we can increase efficiency by about 200% with some fairly minor modifications. The risk of catastrophic failure would only be around 15% per decade, which is pretty good odds." Zelther closed all 4 eyes and sighed deeply. "Dr. Wu, we just accepted humanity into the council. Could we perhaps have one day before you start trying to improve everything?" "Oh, sure, of course," Dr. Wu said, looking slightly embarrassed. "Sorry, we get excited about optimization opportunities. Force of habit. We'll wait until tomorrow to submit the formal proposal." After Dr. Wu left, Zelther returned to his quarters and began writing his daily report. He had started keeping detailed records of human interactions, suspecting they would be valuable for future generations, trying to understand what they had agreed to. "Day 1 of official human membership," he wrote. "I've already declined 17 improvement offers, including modifications to station power systems, life support optimization, and a proposal to replace the council voting system with what the humans call artificial intelligence-assisted decision-making. Humans are terrifying. They call it progress. We call it survival. Somehow, both are true." He paused, then added a final paragraph. 5 years from now, I predict half the council stations will be running on human-modified systems. 10 years from now, we will have adopted technologies we currently consider impossible. 20 years from now, the Galactic Council will be unrecognizable. And throughout all of it, we will be exhausted, terrified, and somehow grateful that these dangerous, brilliant, relentless people decided we were worth saving. The future is going to be interesting. I suspect I will need to learn to function on far less sleep." Years later, Zelther's predictions proved accurate. Council space transformed under human influence. Efficiency increased dramatically. Safety incidents also increased, though humans insisted this was an acceptable trade-off for progress. Innovation exploded across all member species as humans shared their knowledge freely, seemingly unaware that other species needed time to absorb and implement changes carefully. The exhaustion was also universal. Humans operated on a timescale that left other species struggling to keep pace. They treated sleep as optional and rest as a weakness. They saw every problem as solvable and every solution as improvable. They were relentless. But when a new threat emerged at the galaxy's edge, something ancient and terrible that should have been impossible, the Council's first call was to Earth, because when the universe presented an impossible problem, you called the species that didn't believe in impossible. You called the humans, and you prayed they considered you worth saving. They always did. Humans were terrifying in their power, dangerous in their innovation, and absolutely devastating in their inability to accept defeat. But they were also fiercely loyal to their friends, generous with their knowledge, and brave beyond reason when protecting those they cared about. The Galactic Council had survived for 3,000 years through caution and careful planning. They would survive another 3,000 through human innovation and reckless determination. Different methods. Same goal. Somehow, it worked. Zelther, now serving as the first director of human affairs, ended his final report with a note that would become famous throughout the galaxy. Humans are terrifying, and they call it progress. After all these years, I have learned they are right. Progress is terrifying, but it is also necessary. And if we must choose between comfortable stagnation and terrifying advancement, I am grateful that humanity made the choice for us. He paused, thought for a moment, then added one final line. Also, Dr. Wu has submitted another proposal for optimizing our long-range communications. This one only has a 10% chance of catastrophic failure. By human standards, this represents remarkable restraint. We will probably approve it.